Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to episode number 6 of Preparing for Ramadan. Today we're going to be talking about intimacy during this month. Now I know this topic makes some people a little bit uneasy. Some people may not want their kids to watch and all that. So I'm just letting you know ahead of time that we're going to be discussing some sensitive materials or some sensitive topics here. And if I were to rate this episode, I'd rate it PG or PG-13, somewhere around that. Alright, getting right into it. In the previous episode, we talked about those things that would break a person's fast, and we mentioned one of them was sexual intercourse and the like. Now, this is taken from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, "O Messenger of Allah, I am doomed." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Why?" He said, "Because I had intercourse with my wife during the day, during Ramadan." The Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Are you able to free a slave?" He said, "No." The Prophet ﷺ then said, "Are you able to fast for 2 months consecutively?" He said, "No." Then the Prophet ﷺ said, "Are you able to feed 60 poor people?" And he said, "No." At that point, they waited for some time until someone brought the Prophet ﷺ a pail of dates. The Prophet ﷺ took that pail of dates, he gave it to this man, he said, "Go feed the poor." The man replied and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, there is not a single household in Medina that is poorer than my own household." The Prophet ﷺ smiled at this and then told this man, "Go feed your family." Now, a couple things we learned from this hadith. First of all is that sexual intercourse would break a person's fast. Second of all is the expiation for having intercourse while fasting during Ramadan. So what is the expiation? First of all, freeing a slave, that doesn't apply to us. So we move right on to number 2, which is fasting for 2 months consecutively. However, if a person is unable to do that, then it is permissible for the person to feed 60 poor people. And even in that case, if a person is not able to, they can't afford to feed 60 poor people, then in this case, this expiation would drop upon the person. The person simply makes up that fast. Now, this expiation only applies to a person who has certain conditions fulfilled. Number 1, it has to be during the month of Ramadan. So if a person is making up a fast from Ramadan outside of the month of Ramadan, and they happen to have intercourse with their spouse, this expiation would not apply to them. They simply make up that fast. Second of all, it has to be a person who fasting is obligatory upon. And also, the person must be someone who doesn't have a reason for not fasting. So if the person, for example, was sick and they decided to fast anyway, or they were traveling and they decided to fast anyway, and then this happened, then this expiation would not apply to them. Lastly, actual intercourse has to take place. So it can't be things like foreplay or things like that. It has to be actual intercourse. It is only in that case that this expiation would apply to this person. Now let's talk about some of the other things. Common interaction or intimacy between spouses, touching, kissing, caressing. All of that is permissible, it's allowed. And actually it's been narrated to us, the Prophet would actually kiss his wives during the day, during the month of Ramadan while he was fasting. So there's nothing wrong with that kind of stuff as long as a person doesn't fear that ejaculation or a release of seminal fluid may occur. So a release of semen or seminal fluid, if it happens intentionally, then it does indeed break a person's fast. Something like masturbation, for example, that's an intentional case. So masturbation does break the person's fast. The person has to make up that fast. However, if it happens unintentionally, then a person is not responsible for that. That doesn't break their fast. They simply continue in their fast. An example of that will be something like nocturnal emission or a wet dream. That release of semen or seminal fluid didn't happen intentionally. That was out of a person's control. So in that case, they would not make up their fast and they continue in their fast and it is not broken. Last issue I'm going to discuss is pre-seminal fluid or the release of pre-seminal fluid. Does that break a person's fast or not? The answer is no, it does not. But a person should be careful that that doesn't lead to a release of actual semen or seminal fluid. So that's a quick overview of intimacy during the month of Ramadan and what is permissible and what is not permissible and what breaks the fast and what doesn't. And as always, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I'll see y'all in the next episode, inshallah ta'ala. Take care. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.